name is Gabrielle Stevenson. I'm a program specialist in the Office of Inclusive Excellence. What program specialist is, every day I kind of like help to support, connect with students with programming and like resources on campus, but I do run some programming with in the office and then for the greater and larger university as well. So I love what I do. That's great. I would define accessibility is providing access to as many people as possible. So there's physical accessibility, there's emotional accessibility, there are different versions and like pockets of accessibility. I think that the one that typically we think about is physical accessibility when we're thinking about like making sure we have handicap ramps and handicap spacing and making sure that we have access for students that might be hard of hearing or people who might be deaf. Like, what does that access look like? But I do think that a part of accessibility is also like within like the well-being world too. Like, how are we providing access for people to be able to interact with spaces? I think that it is fully like integrated into what we do every day. So when thinking about accessibility, every day is like kind of like that's my goal, right? Is like providing access for students, whether that's physical access for students or just making sure that their voices are being heard. So I think that intrinsically in the mission of caring for the whole person, right? We're caring for all aspects of who we are and how we fit into this larger university lens. So I think that it really is intrinsic into the St. Joe's mission and everything that we do at the institution. And without accessibility, then like, what are we doing? So I think there's always room for improvement, right? I think that I would be not being honest and saying that the university probably can make a lot of strides to improve accessibility on campus. I'll first talk about accessibility for like students with physical disabilities. I think that I've seen a lot of improvement since I actually graduated from St. Joe's. So like things like increasing ramps and making sure that doors open in the correct direction, making sure that buttons actually work, to ensure that students have access to spaces. But I do still think that there's a lot of buildings on campus that are really inaccessible, and places that are really hard to get to if a physical accessibility need or challenge might be present. So I think that our campus might need to be a little bit more like intentional about thinking about how accessibility looks on campus for our students, faculty, and staff members who need it. So I'm thinking the first places that are coming to mind are like the Science Center, which only has a couple of elevators with really, really small, narrow stairwells, in addition to like places like, what's the building? Um, Barberlin Hall, which doesn't have an elevator. Like, it is just really hard to get to certain parts of the building if you have a physical accessibility need. So that's certainly something that I think the institution should probably kind of think about, like infrastructurally, how are we continuing to maintain some of our beautiful and iconic historic buildings, but also update them to be able to adapt and create access for students. Um, in addition to that, I think that the university is trying and moving towards the right direction of making sure that we're providing access for our students that are commuter students, right? I don't think that traditionally we think about like accessibility and physical spaces, I guess. Um, but for commuter students in particular, I think um, the accessibility into integrating fully into like the university climate is something that I would really love to like kind of help work on a lot more, because I think that yes, we have a commuter lounge, but a lot of students are commuting to campus. So is that space no longer meeting the needs of our students? And then what does that then look like to really be integrated into the campus community, to fully feel like a part of the campus community, but also have a designated space for you to just like decompress and do the same thing that traditional students that are living on campus do in what we consider like their dorms or their apartments or their off-campus houses that are close by. So how are we providing access for students like that? But there's probably in a plethora more of things and room for improvement that the university could have in terms of accessibility, but those are some of the couple ones that are coming to mind. How can they be better allies? I think that being an ally is doing your own independent learning and research, right? So not just using the people whose lived experiences are I am living with a physical disability and being the spokesperson and the person that's leading these conversations, but do the independent research on your own to better understand like what challenges might arise, and then to be able to advocate higher up that like these are issues that we should address. The issues of accessibility isn't just the issue for people that are physically disabled, but it's a community effort, so that all people should really feel like they should be a part of this conversation. But I would say, like, do your own independent research. If you feel comfortable and you have a friend that might be physically disabled that feels like they might want to have a conversation with you, like engage them in conversation and seeing like what things would be helpful for me to do to be a better ally. Don't do that and just go up to random students. So like do it with people that you're within community with already, right? And then too, like I know that there's student organizations on campus too that are talking about accessibility needs. So like organizations like Disability Students Association might be a wonderful place if you're interested in engaging more in your allyship, like maybe going to some of their organizations and their programming to see what type of things and needs are coming up, and then advocating. And then again, use your student resources as a St. Joe student to kind of advocate for our marginalized students and marginalized populations on campus. So encourage people to go to student senate meetings, encourage people to write information in the Hawk. Like you all have voices as students. So to be an advocate is to listen, learn, but also push up the information so that more people know. It would look like not having a concern of where my class is, not having a concern of where I need to park on campus, having knowing that when I'm going to the dining hall, I have a place and a space that feels reasonable for me to be able to move through, that I'm not worried about portions of my day to be able to meet and have access, and that I don't feel like othered, if that makes any sense. So I think that true inclusion and true inclusive excellence would look like a student just being like, I'm just a regular student that just happens to have a physical disability. And I know that like no matter what building I'm in, no matter who my professor is, no matter what classroom I'm in, no matter what club I participate in, I can have an entry point, and I don't have to be concerned about, oh, do I need to go to this specific door to be able to get into the building, like, or I need to park in this specific parking lot or spot to be able to have access into an easy access ramp. So true inclusive excellence to me feels like not having to worry about some of the small minute things throughout the day, but just being able to just go throughout your day so that you can focus on being a student. Our physical office space, we had an occupational therapy student last year do like an assessment of all of the spaces that are inclusive excellence spaces. So the Care Collective, the Center for Inclusion and Diversity, the Inclusive Excellence Lounge on the University City campus, they all were like checked over from an occupational therapist perspective to see how accessible the space was. All the spaces we got positive feedback, but some of them, like the physical space, we can't change the fact that there's stairs in some of them, right? So but how are we making those small changes to make sure they're more accessible? So some of the things that we've adapted and added into specifically the CID was like, we have whiteboards on the wall, and some of the feedback was like some people with physical disabilities might not be able to access the whiteboard at like in the same way. So we've implemented like tabletop whiteboards for students to be able to have a little bit more accessibility, that they can easily move throughout the space, but also be able to study in the same way that other students can. And then also improving like lighting systems to make sure that like for students that might have like light sensitivity, like there's not as bright lights, or like we're not using LED lights as much. So there's been some intentional efforts, but there's always ways to improve. My hope is that at some point, like the Cure Collective, I love the space. I feel like the space is wonderful, but it isn't really accessible, right? So places like Operation Tampon and the Career Closet, they are on the upstairs portion of that building. So what does that then look like if you're a student with a physical disability that wants to access some of those resources? Certainly, like we could take pictures and be able to pull some of the items down to be able to talk about it, but there's no way right now that we have infrastructurally to be able to access those spaces. So Again, I would love to be able to look at the university map and and all 3 campuses to look at what accessibility looks like on Hawk Hills campus, what buildings are working well that we don't have to worry about, what buildings can maybe be remodeled or updated to make it more accessible for students, and do the same thing on the University City campus and as well as Lancaster. I do think that Lancaster, out of the 3 campuses, is more, accessible than the other 2. Take an opportunity to put yourself in another student's shoes and what things that you're doing throughout your day that might be more challenging or might be a little bit it might take longer to do if you had a physical disability. I would definitely encourage our faculty members to think about like how that looks in their like pedagogy and how they're teaching their coursework as well. So when thinking about how you're structuring your class, how you're physically setting up your classroom, if you have the ability to move things around, right? How some of your assignments are done, to really think about how that is for all students and how all students would be able to receive whatever that content is. And then I think that for like St. Joe's students, like again, do the research on your own. I encourage them to do some independent listening. And also like don't feel like the people who are experiencing physical disabilities, the people that are in it, need to be the only voices that are advocating for change needing to be made. We can all understand and do some additional work on our own to be able to help support the communities, but like speak up, use your resources, and then do some research and ask our office if there's any ways that we can help to support any of the initiatives as well, because it's deeply embedded in the work that we do.